Perception is your reality. Now, this is something that I kind of wanted to delve into a bit when it comes to how NASCAR fans are viewing what just happened. A lot of NASCAR fans look at what happened yesterday either as one of the best things the sport can have or as a travesty of this sport, and it's completely fractured the base, as the playoffs usually do. Let's be completely honest here. This happens all the time. But I wanted to address this. See, people say this phrase a lot, that perception is your reality, that it's the way you frame stuff, and I get that argument on a lot of different bases. But I think that when you look at the broad picture of where NASCAR's at right now, this is something that really needs to be addressed by, I think, maybe every fan, but I think every fan kind of gets this much more by the higher-ups themselves. And with that, you have basically something that I was actually taught a lot when I was in classes, where, for instance, a business class or an economics class is, for a lot of people, this kind of phrase, people saying that perception is reality. That's a phrase that's basically a lot like the customer's always right. They might not be right about everything. Maybe they're not right about the direction the sport could go, but it's the way that they see it right now, and it's the way it's been presented. The current perception, I think, right now is that NASCAR is a legitimacy problem. It's been a little bit acknowledged at this point by those running the sport. We saw the State of the Sport address where they did talk about that they see things, that they will probably do tweaks to the playoffs, or they would keep playoffs, but maybe not in this form. And I think that was something that many, myself included, probably lost in the shuffle with all of this. But it's also something that a lot of fans see as out of touch. See, given that they acknowledged it in at least words, I think that is actually a lot better than what has been in the past, especially back in the Brian France days where it would just completely be ignored. And then all of a sudden we'd have a big change after Brian France the year before had said the health of the sport is better than ever. So I give the Steves at least that credit, though I think a lot of it was lip service. I do think it's interesting that Dale Earnhardt Jr. last week on Dale Jr. Download did say that people would be surprised if TV money wasn't a factor, what those running NASCAR would actually choose to do. And I think it's very interesting that he said that, one, right after what all had happened, but two, right before the championship race, when we all knew that NASCAR more or less was in a no-win scenario whatsoever. So the perception is there. And the thing with Joey Logano winning the championship is it was going to be unpopular no matter what. People hate Joey Logano, and you knew this was coming, obviously. But I think that this is kind of exacerbating a bigger issue here. If this was William Byron, or Kyle Larson, or Ross Chastain that won this championship, I really don't think we'd see this reaction. But at the same time, I don't think it's more or less because of Joey Logano. Joey Logano won the championship under the system provided. Now, do I think he deserves a championship this year in its purest form? No. No, he doesn't. He was the 12th best driver out there. Looking at stats right now, yes, he had 4 wins on the year, but he had 7 top 5s, 13 top 10s, and a 17th place average finish. He scored the 12th most points out of anybody out there. But the championship is not graded off that anymore. Those are definitely old parameters to grade it off of. But at the same time, we're racing fans. And as racing fans, we see these people against everybody else in the field every single week. There were 35 drivers the entire season that ran, or at least were going to attempt, every single race against each other. And in that's why many fans like a full season format, because you can grade through the aggregate. You see over the season how each person stacks up, and the playoff side of it really isn't necessarily needed. But with this, do not hate Joey Logano. Joey Logano, again, is the embodiment of don't hate the player, hate the game. And with this, you look at a lot of what happened that led up to this that also would add to that hate. You add in that he got in with the Bowman DQ. You add in he qualified in the playoffs to begin with on a 5 overtime finish race at Nashville, where he was running 14th, right around where he's been running all year, when that race ended under regulation. You look at the fact of Martinsville having blatant race manipulation. Even those on the broadcast were saying as much. Dale Jarrett actually called it point shaving, which was very, very telling, I think, that somebody who's been around that long was willing to say stuff like that. And you have a no-win scenario in all of this for NASCAR with the guys that made it in. You had Joey Logano for reasons I've explained. You have William Byron, who got in off of blatant manipulation from Chevrolet. You have Ryan Blaney, who has completed the 33rd most amount of laps of any driver in the Cup Series this season. And then you have Tyler Reddick, who for NASCAR is a no-win because had he won, you'd be handing a trophy to somebody whose team is suing you. So NASCAR put themselves in this position, and NASCAR is the one who should shoulder the blame, not Joey Logano. I'm going to defend Joey Logano on this a ton because Joey Logano is one of the best drivers we have in the sport. But I believe he has 36 career wins in his career in Cup, and with that, he is easily going to get to 50. He's very young still as far into his career as he's gotten, and I think he's going to be looked at as one of the 15 to 20 greatest drivers at a minimum at the end of his career, and he gets way too much hate. I think that if there was a full season format, I think he'd probably end up getting a championship or two because they would have raced different. Under the chase format, 10 races consistent. I know a lot of people don't want to hear this because they want this system. I think Joey Logano would excel at it because he wouldn't have to do as many dumb things that could get him into crashes. And the big part of the playoffs, the perception side of it, that is ringing true with data is it's not growing the sport. When NASCAR introduced the chase in 2004, it was clear that it was for ratings. The networks really wanted it, Brian France wanted it, the drivers and fans didn't based on polling, but that's what we got. And since then, we've seen change after change after change trying to make it more interesting. Whether it be adding spots that would have gotten guys like Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart in to get stars in the chase back in the day, whether it be to have wins, I think, honestly, added in with a wild card to try and get Dale Jr., who couldn't find a win if it slapped him in the face in 2009 and 2010, or then the win and you're in elimination style for more drama. They're chasing ratings. And how does this pan out? Well, I have the numbers right here. Since 2013, the last year of the chase itself, the regular season is down 49.7% in viewership compared to 52.1% in the playoffs. A 2% drop from the playoffs to regular season in drop in viewership, so I don't think too bad. But then when you look a little more in depth at recent years, or at least years that more stack up to this, in 2014, 44.4% more people watched the regular season compared to 50.1% more in the playoffs. That's a 5.7% difference. And then in 2018, which I look at as a big cutoff because it was the first year without Dale Earnhardt Jr., which, like it or not, I'm a fan of his, but you have to admit, with no bias aside, Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s popularity carried a core amount of this fan base, and no matter how popular NASCAR was, his retirement from full-time racing was going to affect how people watch this sport. Now, when you look at it, 12.8% of a drop in viewership of the regular season has happened since 2018. How much in the playoffs? 19.5%. That is a nearly 7% difference between the two, which is a very big loss when you look at it. And the regular season overall has actually hovered around that 3 million mark. If you look at the regular season in NASCAR, the viewership is stable. It's the playoffs that have went down. And yes, this year, regular season viewership was up a skosh and the playoffs were up a little bit more. But that was up from the very, very worst, being 2023. Now, if the sport was growing, I would understand this fully. Keep it on there even if I don't like it. It gets more people watching NASCAR. And at the end of the day, I want this sport to succeed. But it's not with this part. We've changed the schedule. We've changed the cars. We've changed marketing. We've changed a lot of different things, drivers, you name it. And there's no big increase. There's one thing that is similar about all of this still, and it is the format. And you look, the networks, I'm looking right here at it. Next year, only 3 playoff races will be on big NBC. Yes, I know NBC will get 4 races total, but there's no way they take the regular season finale of Daytona off of big NBC. If they do that, that's just plain dumb because it's a big ratings winner. And only 9 combined races on Fox and NBC will be on their big networks. The rest are on cable or streaming platforms. When you compare to this year, where I believe about 19 or 20 are on big Fox and NBC. If the networks really cared that much about the playoffs in particular, wouldn't they put more of the races on networks where more people could see them? That's another big question you have to look at with this. The network's actions don't meet the words that many say they do. This isn't sustainable. I think there's two options you can do with this here. One, you can try and just keep trudging forward. Don't change a thing, keep it the same, and just try and let those people, some like me, some like others that might be in the comments, fall away from the sport that don't like it, or just be forced to like it or to deal with it and cultivate a bigger fan base that would like the playoff side of things. Or you can go back a bit. Now, I would love to go back to a full season points format, but it ain't happening. I would love it. But those who watched that format when it was actually being run, well, that was over 20 years ago at this point. And those fans who might be at the time in their early or mid 30s are now in their mid to late 50s going into their 60s. That's not the base NASCAR wants. But I think you can go back to a 10-race chase with playoff points, with stages, all of that. You don't have to change or reinvent the wheel you have right now, but I think a little bit of a change would be okay with it. It's been only about 10 years, and there's a lot of those kids that are now, like me, in their 20s that did grow up with the chase and were actually pretty okay with it. So you could cultivate that side of the fan base, which I think is the most vocal and the most easily seen on social media, and the perception can change a little bit. I think that would be a happy medium between the consistency and the entertainment value of it, and helping legitimize it a bit more for those watching and not watching, covering a lot of bases with one change that maybe, while not producing a Hail Melon, isn't going to produce either any or as much manipulation and just poor performance that we've seen win the championship. Last year, Ryan Blaney's championship win was at the time one of, if not the worst. And that record's been broken by Joey Logano now. So to me, this offseason is crucial for NASCAR. They have to address this in some way. They have to reestablish a legitimacy with fans so that fans aren't questioning them and questioning leadership in tow with that. If they just keep doing the same, stick their head in the sand, have the media speak for them of how everything is great and we don't need to question anything, we are just going to have more of the same, and you're going to have more diehard fans fall away. And if you're not bringing in new fans and you're losing diehards, it's only going to get worse. They have to address this in some way. At this point, it's a necessity. But that's just what I think. I want to know what you think down below. Am I sounding the alarm bells the right way, or am I completely off my rocker? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're at it, leave a like in this video, share this video, and subscribe to this channel for more great and fun NASCAR content. We'll be live on Wednesday night on Eric Estep's channel for NWP. Should be a lot of fun. So until next time, have a good one.